Good evening, everybody, and very, very happy to be here today. I know it's a Friday evening, but it's Bangalore, and you will surely find a full house, pretty much a full house for a topic like urban governance. How many ever times you talk about it, I think BIC has had like many of these conversations, but it always, draws attention and interest. So, in fact, like you would say, if two people meet in England, they talk about the weather. Two people meet in Bangalore, we talk about potholes. So we pretty much are, I think, slightly obsessed with civic issues at some level. So thank you all for being here, and I'm glad to be in the presence of two urban legends who have their own fans here, I'm sure. And so we will start. So cities, by definition, I mean, we all know every city in India, every part of India is pretty much going through the same pain points. Bangalore is probably like more painful than some other cities, but it's all like there's nothing new, right? And we've been talking about these issues for, I don't know, ever and ever. If you look at the paper, it feels like deja vu sometimes, right? July, I saw there was a headline in July, right? Bangalore gets Raste Gundi Gamana app to report potholes in the city. And then it was the same time, there was another announcement for 17 new elevated roads. Like you kind of tend to forget, was it 2024 or was it 2018 or whatever, right? Things kind of repeat and with regular frequency. In fact, in the time that BMTC is taken to develop a intelligent transport app, Apple has moved from iPhone 6 to iPhone 16. So pretty much a lot of things are going on and on and on. So we know the issues. We kind of, in a way, I think, resigned to it. In fact, today when I was like, when BSc Vikram had reached out to ask me to moderate, I was wondering, racking my brain, what is it that, we would learn something new here? So one of the things is, yes, we're all familiar with the issues, but there's a lot of inside stories and understanding and the story behind the story kind of things that somebody with such a great long career would have to share. So I'm hoping today between Ravi and Dr. Ravindra, we will hear many of those old stories and like what has worked, what has not, and the intricacies of many of those earlier developments, which will help understand like and figure out how do we not let it repeat. I'm hoping that is what we will hear today. So with that, I want to just dive into my fundamental question. I really want to understand this political system, and today I'm going to wear the hat of a very typical person. Not say okay, it's. I think there's too much of this expectation and burden on citizens saying, oh, we should be involved, we should actually get actively engaged and start fixing things. All that is true. I keep harping on that in normal days, but today I just want to wear the hat of an average person and say, we want the government to work. This is our expectation, and why the hell is it not happening? So I really want to understand the, sort of the background, saying typically every city and specifically Bangalore, we don't have master plan guiding the development, we don't have an elected body, there's very little finance and, the corporations are not self-sufficient. It's going on, and typically the whole, it's a political problem, right? And governing is kind of set as it's a set of projects or a series of tenders and contracts and work orders. So why is this happening and what is it? And behind all this is the whole political system, the politicians, the bureaucrats. What is there in their mind? Why are they doing this? Very fundamental question I'd like to pose to both of you.
You should start first.
Okay. Thank you, first of all, for organizing this, and VIC, especially Ravi, I think, pushed it further. Well, as I said, the three of us have been discussing, debating urban issues and particularly Bengaluru issues for a long time. So the obvious question is why some things have remained the same over the years. For instance, started by referring to potholes. Potholes was there, 25, 30, 40 years when I served in the corporation. I tried to fix them, but the potholes continue to be there even today. Although with the developed technology, this is the difference. Those days we didn't have the kind of technology that we have today. So if you ask what's the difference between, let us say, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years ago. I would say in Bengaluru or Bangalore, it is perhaps, like what Charles Dickens said, it's the best of times and the worst of times. So the best is, it has grown as a great IT city, technology city. Not only is it a startup capital and anything new in the IT technology sector, Bangalore, catches up. So Bangalore's economic growth is good. It stands number one so far as economic growth is concerned. Even according to the Ministry of Urban Affairs, the index they prepared for the last 2 years. While in municipal progress or performance index, Bengaluru doesn't figure in the first 10 or even probably very, very much low down. Whereas they have another index called ease of living index. There it tops, number one. But I was a bit confused because ease of living is certainly not something that characterizes Bangalore in many ways, but they interpret it differently. Especially, they go by economic growth. So far as economy is concerned, yes, investors come in and all that, and maybe, if you pose questions to them, they'll say, yes, it is number one. It is number one in human resource, technology, in a number of things, institutions it has and all that. But as I said, in municipal performance, which is basically maintenance of roads and infrastructure, transport and water supply, power supply, and all these things, then it's nowhere still. So it is puzzling, as you said, why is this happening? And that is the fundamental question I have posed. In fact, my basic question that I have raised was, why is it that India in general, because all cities, we have these problems, and in Bengaluru in particular, where we have made great strides in science and technology, we have best of scientists, technologists, etc. We are not able to manage cities well. So, see, we have the best of managers. In the sense, Indian have become managers of international organizations like Microsoft and all that. Here also, scientists, technologists, managers, but we are not able to manage cities well. It is still confused. So why? So instead of beating about this, a lot of issues I have discussed, what are all the things. But my fundamental question that I have also posed is, who governs our cities? And how are the cities governed? So governance is the key question. So whether it is failure in infrastructure or supplies, municipal supplies, etc., or even the bigwigs and IT people aren't coming about complaining with their own kind of complaints. See, we seem to be failing in governance. So I have said clearly there is a governance failure. And behind this, these are the two questions to be answered. It is not merely having, let us say you have the necessary funds, the people, etc. You may know how. You know what is known, what are all the issues, and perhaps how they should be tackled also. So many views from Ravi's report earlier on that governance restructuring report, that gives you all those things. But the more important question is, who is governing? So unless you answer, that is the question she was raising, in a way, politics. So the fundamental question again is that it's not, we should know that, city politics is very important. We are ignoring that. I think you want to.
No, I just want to kind of get into the next level. Yeah. If you can explain, like, in your long career, you've seen politicians, you've been part of the system, you've seen the officials. What is in their mind?
I can't say what is in their mind. I'm not a futurologist or psychologist to say. But I can tell you what is happening in my own experience. See, basically, politicians look at problems in general, whatever issues they face, and city governance in particular, I have felt, in a very different framework from how we look at it. For them, you see, number one, you must remember each of them gets elected for 5 years. And sometimes they don't stay for 5 years. Now, for instance, city of Bangalore itself now, there will be no elected body for the past 4 years, I think, almost. So, you see, you'll have to distinguish again between politicians at the local level, the state level, and the central level. I'll give you an interesting, my own experience. The first time I was in Bangalore City Corporation, then it was called, in the late 80s. See, I had the experience of working in BBMP in the 80s and the 90s as well. See, elected councillors, but that used to be full term and things like that. And see, those who were municipal councillors at that time, when I was commissioner first time, later became MLAs, members of the Legislative Assembly. Earlier in the council, they used to attack the government, state government, you are not releasing, you are not doing this for the city. And now after having become MLAs, they themselves are not showing the same interest because there you wield a different kind of power. So that's the most important thing to know is that we all talk about decentralization, empowerment of local bodies, ward committees. It's not happening because at the state level, the politicians, they are unwilling to part with power. So even today, cities, the power of, many things in giving sanctions and taking major decisions. See, for instance, you mentioned about master plan. Master plan, which was prepared in 2007, up to 2015, it went to government long ago, that has not been approved, for their own reasons. So it has to go to the government for approval. Although there is a city planning authority, VDA is the planning authority, statutorily they can sanction. But in practice also this is what happening. So reluctance to part with power at whatever stage you are. The same things can be said about central government. That will come to federalism, issues of state-center relations and all that. So this is what is happening. They look at it from their own interest. What do I get from the city or the thing? Today, see, the power in cities essentially pertains to land. I will come to that later if you want. But briefly, this is the picture.
Ravi, you want to add,
Yeah.
is it a lack of vision? Is it?
No, so I'll tell you two things. One, of course, who owns the city, who's in charge. I've said this even before, but it's worth repeating because some may not have heard it. The reality is we have a constitutional defect at the birth of the Constitution. While the center and state roles were clearly defined as Tier 1 and Tier 2 of government with concurrent list and state list and central list, unfortunately, when it came to the third tier, which is the city government or the local rural government, whatever, unfortunately, they used the word, it's a local body. So they didn't have the courage to go and define the third tier of city government or any kind of government. Yes, which is unfortunate, given that whether it was Bose, Nehru, Rajaji, all of them cut their teeth in city government before going to national politics. So you had a leadership which actually came from the city into national, but when it came to the Constitution, they were okay with one person, one vote, but somewhere they stopped shy of saying that there is a third tier with legislative powers and running the third tier of government. And we are still paying a price for it after all these years. I mean, just a point. To your question on politicians, the way I look at it is as follows. See, when you get elected with fishing rights. I call it as fishing rights to a pond. So you get fishing rights. Think of Bangalore, since we're talking about the city. Think of it that you have got fishing rights for this pond. And what is now happening when you have fishing rights? Consequent set of people prefer to fish in this pond, which has become extremely toxic. And we continue to try to fish in a pond that is very toxic. Now, normally, as a private sector guy, when I have a market which is a pond, I will think about how to make the pond into a lake. How do I make the lake into a river? I will still have fishing scope, but I'm now fishing in a larger lake for starters and subsequently in river. So if I take the analogy of that, the question is the political class development is really about converting that toxic pond towards a lake and towards a river. The reason why it does not happen is that the worst, because given that power goes from one party to another every 5 years, the worst thing that can happen is I do the right things by the long term,
and you, my opponent, get to fish. So I would rather leave a toxic pond for you to continue fishing. So collectively, the political class is not taking the interest which is in the long term. Very crudely, if I can say, if you take China as an example, because we keep saying China, what China has really done is gone from pond to lake to river. The reason they did it is the Communist Party was in control politically through the entire process. So they are now fishing in the river. So because it was the same party, it is happening, while in our case, we tend to take short term. So that is one problem. A lot of it can really be tied, I mean, we'll come to land, other things, is to this issue of fishing. We should not be in denial. I mean, in the past, there have been talk about so much percentage and all that stuff. It's a reality. So we should not kid ourselves that when you see a project worth 500 crores, you can be sure that 250 crores is gone. And the remaining 250 crores is not necessarily wisely spent. So these are live problems. And therefore, it is not rocket science to build roads without potholes, which don't develop potholes. But there is a business in potholes. You know, the National Highway has a defect liability period of 5 years. And they have actually an automated system that if a fault appears, they just deduct from the contractor, no questions asked. It's just deducted, which is why you find that is in better shape. But we don't, because for us, the pothole is part of the overall fishing rights model. So to my mind, the crux really is, as you rightly said, we know we have been talking about the same problems, same issues. The key is, how do we break this logjam? You know, because you talk about governance. I've worked on governance in official committees for 6-7 years. It's a yawn. It's a yawn for citizens. They yawn. For the political class, they say, bore mat karo. I mean, beda ye governance, etc. So the point really is, there is no constituency or market. Even the latest, I mean, we have worked and given on a bill. We can talk later about a tale of two bills. There is a bill in the assembly which is at total variance with the bill that the committee has done. While I recognize the government's right, I recognize their right to table a bill that they deem fit because they are the elected leaders, but without even a by your leave as to why these suggestions are a thing, it's quite obvious why this is not accepted and why that is accepted, or what they have tabled. And this is part of the problem, Meera.
So that's exactly was my question, saying what is it, that mindset that wants to just keep it a pond all through and not really expand, which is why it's
See, the point really
how
is,
do you change that?
I can exemplify what he has said, fishing pond, by my own experience. I mean, let us take, I mean, he also mentioned about roads. It is no-brainer. You can certainly improve the quality of roads. My own experience in trying to do this, I'll tell you. So when I was administrator, I mean, I was both administrator at one time and commissioner in the city corporation, maybe in the mid-90s or so. Then as soon as I assumed charge, I found roads in such a bad condition that something had to be done. And I found that, you know, with the earlier tenders and all that, it's only the local contractors will come and it is all fishing sharing of the fishing rights and things like that. So I thought I'll first try to build some roads on a scientific basis. So for the first time, we engaged some consultants who were, you know, really very good technical consultants. They did pro bono. So we developed, you know, very good standards and norms for laying the roads and all that. Then we advertised and calling for it. When, see, the tenders came in. So I found very good contractors applied, and then we wanted to finalize and then issue the orders. Then at the last minute, there is again from the top, from the state government, I got a call saying that, you know, here, or the councillors, I mean, who are ex-councillor or politicians, let us say, they began a campaign against me saying that, you know, this is all getting delayed because, you know, the roads are becoming very bad, you must have. So they didn't want that those good contractors to be there because they found that none of the local contractors qualified. See, that was the sharing thing. So I had to postpone that one. I'll just finish the story. When I again went as commissioner later, I again took up this and I thought, I'm wiser by experience. Some similar exercises carried out, but then the real problem those days was lack of funds. From the government, we were not getting these grants and all that. So I went in for the first time municipal bonds. He knows that. So that's the first time in India. So we mobilized more than 100 crores and what. We succeeded in it. There again, the more interesting thing was when we called for tenders, and I finally see they are all ganged up, and there was no response at all.
And,
I'll come to that.
and I'll quickly. No, I just want to quickly share in the roads the tender shore example with which I was very closely associated.
Yeah, tender, sure.
So the whole idea of tender show was you build a road around the pedestrian, you build life cycle and all good things basically. And when we put it out to bid initially, nobody bid. And being a researcher, I went and met L&T. I met about 5-6 of the big companies and saying, look, this is a new age road. It is this thing. Why are you guys not bidding? So they gave, if I remember right from memory, 5 reasons why they don't wish to bid.
Yeah.
Reason number 1, they said the corporator will not allow me to work on the road. They will interfere and till I this thing. Second, they said that you believe that BBMP, BWSSB, BESCOM can be made to work together to give you one common plan and road. Never going to happen. It's a pipe dream. That's second reason. Third reason, we don't foresee competent people across the table with whom we can discuss and get this thing done. Fourth, we have zero confidence that our bills will get paid without commissions of a pretty high order. And it goes on. Therefore, we actually then set up an empowered committee with the Chief Secretary, Finance Secretary, etc. Said we will ring fence this project. We will ring fence this project in a manner that the first set of 7 roads can happen without all these 4 or 5 infirmities. And that is how Tender Shore as a project became possible, because you had to do that to get through the road. Subsequently, of course, now Tender Shore has become mainstream for one simple reason. It is not because they care for pedestrian. The cost of a Tender Shore road is higher because it's got utilities and other things. And projects and higher project size we really love, because how to take money out of projects is an art and a science. And that happens all the time.
Thanks, Ravi. I'll come to the funds question, but just to take off on this comment, you talked about the constitution, like talking about local bodies, right? Very simplistic approach, but, and this is, if we just renamed it as city governments, instead of calling it local bodies or palike or any of the other terms, do you think it would make a difference? Because I think the problem is also in citizens' mindsets. All of us think of it as a service delivery body, rather than this is an arm of the government that is closest to us. So,
but what is the arm that is closest to you? The elected body is BBMP.
yeah.
And BBMP is less than 20-25% of my life. Water supply, sewerage, outside BBMP. Electricity, outside BBMP. Bus transport, outside. Metro transport, outside. So what is this BBMP animal that we keep saying is local government? It's a sham. See, a true local government needs to have all the civic thing in a truest sense under it. We have nothing resembling it. What is happening really is, we are all being told, look at that, look at that. We are all being distracted with various things without going to the essence of what does it mean to be a citizen and live in a city where services can be provided. We have nothing resembling that. BBMP is not local government. Though you have an election to that body, it does not represent 80% of what you face in the city.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Just let me expand on that and give my own experience. See, this was well known. We had been discussing and all that. So later, after retirement, I was for some time advisor to the chief minister. In that capacity, we prepared a metropolitan governance bill. There is a big committee and all that. There, we brought in all this. All bodies to be under the umbrella of the elected body, maybe BBMP, whatever you may call it. And so more important than that, at the city level, city government, as you said, you need a political executive which is empowered. See, today, there's no political executive as such. Mayor has no powers. They say commissioner has all powers under the act, but still some committees and all, informally, a lot of power gets vested in them. So the conflict goes on. So we try to rationalize everything and put in place a good governance bill. which took care of all this coordination and financing and all those things. And then, when it was taken to the chief minister, because I was close, and he said, it is good, you bring it up to the cabinet. So I took this to the cabinet. The cabinet, naturally some ministers, especially from Bangalore, I won't name them, they started murmuring and asking. I said, then they said, okay, we want to know the deal, make a presentation. I made not 1, 2, 3, 4 presentations before the cabinet subcommittee they had set up. And after that, that was the end of it, because they never wanted to take it up. See, this is about the answer, real short answer to your question.
So that's true. I mean, as in right from this committee to Kasturirangan committee to your restructuring.
Live examples of what is happening. Now, even if you take today, you have a bill in the assembly. Even I also blame finally even citizens at the end of the day.
Also.
If you take BBMP Act 2020 or the current bill which is there, I'm just talking about ward committee and citizen participation, which is the holy grail of the ultimate fix. That the current bill is the same 2020, which is nominated committee and all that stuff. Our bill is extremely strong on what should be the ward committee function, what should be, how it should be constituted, and all kinds of empowerment. Nobody has shown any interest. Neither civil society has shown interest in this whole, that there is a government committee bill which says that. And the politicians are clearly said we are not interested in it. They just want to perpetuate the existing system on citizen participation. So the point I'm really trying to make is, even when you have an option on the table, there is no pressure from anybody that why are we not considering it. I'm not saying our committee bill is perfect, but there is zero pressure from the ground that this is better than that. I hope you get what I'm saying. There is a bill which has been made by a government appointed committee, not some random thing. There is a bill tabled in the assembly. And I'm saying examine the two, but you still don't want to do it. So we have many, many problems to fix. My own view is more than citizen participation. I really think that citizens need to be more informed. If we can get more and more citizens to think about it, think about this issue, think about this announcement, slowly I think there'll be a mind shift change where there's a better appreciation of how we are being taken for a ride. And what Calcutta has shown, that collectively when a break point comes, that is of course what happened there is really totally reprehensible and can understand it. But you need moments like that needs to come on city issues, which says no more. Till we reach that point, we are going to be continue to be taken for a ride.
So let's take that gap. So I agree, see, over years, we've seen Bangalore's civic groups have actually been talking about decentralization, empowered mayor. It is reasonably sort of a common, a concept that many people do know about. Yet, like you're saying, there's not enough pressure to actually make it happen. But
how many of them have sought a meeting with the legislative subcommittee to say, I don't like your ward committee in your bill? How many of them have done it?
I think that maybe we should ask that question when we
Sanna,
open up
what
a
I'm just
Q&A.
trying to say, we are talking. PowerPoint slides, everything looking perfect. But on the ground, it's just the reverse. That's really the point I'm trying to make.
Okay, we'll come to that question, but I was just thinking, in a way, this reflects the challenges that you can see in federalism, right? When the center actually has a problem like delegating power to the states kind of speak up, and there is noise, and there is a lot of citizen sort of support for that, because there's this identity of states, right? It becomes like a competing thing, saying, okay, you are, discriminating against the south or against this state or that state. Is the issue that cities don't have that kind of an identity, the sense of ownership, and do you think that's something to?
There are two things. It's an important question in a way. Does the city have an identity? You see, for instance, Calcutta, what is happening now, Calcutta has a more, kind of a better identity of the city amongst the citizens than Bengaluru, I would say. Bangalore we say it is a cosmopolitan city, but it is also desperate. Different types of people coming from different states, they hardly are able to come together. The only group of citizens who come together in Bangalore, I find, is only when there are some issues like in the language, Kannada, because they have as Kannada Chalyoligaras or whatever it is. So there is a very clear identity. Similarly, for instance, we can talk about this, when it comes to caste, then there is an identity, there is a big movement, etc. See, in what happened in Calcutta now, that became so big because it's more an emotional issue. When emotional issues come up, citizens do join, at least that kind of a group. So what is happening in Calcutta is the doctors who joined together. More than, people have supported it, yes. But they are not letting it go.
Every
That
day
is
there's a death because of potholes and somebody taking a deviation.
So this is
but
the
it is
thing.
not moving the city. It is not moving the needle. It has become normalized.
So if citizens have to come together, see, there are two things. One, as Ravi said, they need to be better informed. They also need to be better motivated and have a passion for the city. See, if I have a passion for the city, I tell you, you do something, citizen matters, he does something. See, we each of us, there are so many, that way in Bengaluru, so many groups, so many, they know, each one wants to do something, but we are not able to come together. That's what I have been saying. I tell people also, we need to create a pressure group. Unless we create a pressure group and go and meet, maybe stage dharana, I said, if you want, I will lead so many times.
And Meera, and also, this identity, as Dr. Ravindra rightly said, language is a big marker. So when we go into who is a Bangalorean, etc., we will get down this language issue. I think the relevant question is what makes a Bangalorean. To me, what makes and that's partly because my Kannada is not strong enough. Artha agata, but Mata the Bala Kashta. So therefore, I have to twist the whole question framing itself to my advantage. Therefore, I feel the relevant question is what makes a person a Bangalorean, as opposed to who is a Bangalorean, because who is a Bangalorean will get us into a different kind of debate. And it's, that is really not helpful. But what makes a Bangalorean then brings into, have you been part of your RWA? Have you helped out in this? Have you did something else? You then start moving the conversation as to what makes a person that city dweller, as opposed to the who question, just as an identity point.
Yeah, I think that's something there's got to be a lot of work needs to be done in that space. That seems to be a
maybe Citizen Matters should run a whole series on what makes a Bangalorean and how is that different from who is a Bangalorean.
There will be a lot of differences there. Yeah, okay. Go
Thank you. But let me come back to the funds question, right? So this is a city which is like milk for what it's worth. Everybody at the state level is actually looking to Bangalore for revenues. And yet, sorry. And yet, as the local body or the city government actually has very little funds. It's not self-reliant. It's always dependent on handouts to the state. How do you actually change this? What strategies? Of course, some of it has been addressed in the various bills that have come up. But in general, for the long term, what strategies should we take up to say, okay, we have the money, we'll get it done?
See, further later.
Will you please go?
Now let us go back to the constitutional issues you raised and all that. So India is a federation. As I said, to begin with, the local bodies, local government, the third tier was not part of the constitution at all. So it got ignored. And another thing I'll tell you, initially, soon after independence, urban development, urban issues never got any prominence because we were overwhelmingly rural. So rural development, agriculture, that took all the attention of the central government, state governments, etc. That is one side of the story. So later, when central government was also seized of empowering the local bodies. So 74th Amendment. The first one was 73rd Amendment, which tried to empower the rural local. In fact, rural local bodies are more empowered. They have panchayats have more power than the municipalities. So 74th Amendment, which perhaps is more an afterthought of 73rd, although they said it is, they create, again it is not a local self-government. It's again local bodies because it doesn't have recognition as a third tier of government. So they only amended it and said it is for the state, they empowered the state government. It is for the state governments to empower the urban local bodies or municipalities, there is a word used as municipalities, as they deem fit. So again it is left to the state governments, so they are not doing it. So now that's why I have said one of the important things I have ended with is, you will have to revisit 74th Amendment. 74th Amendment, again DPC, MPC, they are all confusing. So if you want to really empower the local government, constitutional amendment is the first thing. So that then you feel more empowered and people automatically say it becomes a
So
constitutional
Meera,
issue.
your question was on funds, we'll come to that. But just to finish quickly the 74th so that we can get the 74th out of the way. 74th is useful to get court stays. Very useful. So its biggest purpose really is to keep using it. The 74th is an absolutely worthless, useless amendment. And I'm saying it with all responsibility of someone who has worked in the system for 24 years. It has 18 items. First thing is it covers municipality, which is BBMP, doesn't recognize parastatals and all that in the first place. You list 18 functions about what it means to live in a city, and transport is not one of them. 18 you list, and you don't think transport is a function which is relevant for a city. You don't list urban commons, which is why our public spaces are shrinking. And the 74th, we need way beyond a planning committee. You need an MPC plus plus, the Metropolitan Planning Committee plus plus. Because planning per se is useless sans the proper implementation. And the reality of Bangalore is, from 1985, as he mentioned, the master plan and the CDPs, and the last one of 2007, we are in this mess partly because of that journey. And we still think that the next CDP is the answer. It's amazing. There's a saying, when you're in a hole, the first thing you stop doing is to dig further, because you're going to go further in the hole. You got to start thinking, how do I come out of this hole? All that we are doing, CDP as some religious thing, and figuring out which color needs to be painted for what, and we want to do one more cycle of that. When are we going to learn and wake up and smell the coffee? We are totally in la la land in terms of this thing. Yeah.
This is pretty much true of all cities. Even though Mumbai, for example, has lots of money, Delhi gets so much attention. Do you want to just comment on what is it that there is universally in all?
So, for example, on money, we ourselves as a committee have shown that it is possible to collect twice the property tax as of today with the current system, not even raising taxes.
Yeah, that's
He is the original proponent of the self-assessment scheme, and I was his shishya who took it forward. So basically on the premise that trust the citizen to tell the truth, then expect a revenue officer to uncover a lie. That was the guiding principle. And it has been reasonably successful.
Yeah, reasonably
But today, the reason that you're collecting less property tax is there are cozy arrangements between the tax officers and the property owners where you declare less, pay less to the city, and there's a side deal. So that is one. The second thing is citizens are smart. At the end of the day, they know that if I pay my due share, anyway it's a bunch of crooks running the place in their perception, right or wrong. So better I cheat the city by not giving my share than give my share and they cheat me of my fairly earned money. So you rationalize it and say that it's okay to not do what you have to do because they are anyway not using the fund. There's a serious trust deficit between government and the citizens.
And see, citizens and the state, see, it is, so both are the system, let's say, existing system, and quite a number of citizens, maybe even big measure. They seem to have colluded in a way to deny, the right revenues to the local government or even others and things like that.
You had an interesting suggestion, right, to kind of demarcate around 10% of the GST or something to
See, this is the thing. There are new sources now. See, now the GST has come, which was not there earlier. Now, GST has, that way the arrangement of GST is good. I have comment on the rates and all that. So, it is, there is a GST council comprising members of the central government, union finance minister chairman, and the state government, state finance ministers and all. So, 50% of the GST goes to the central government, 50% to the state. But nothing comes to the local body, the local government, the city. So, I had suggested that part of the GST should come to the city government. And fortunately, I found that, the economist, Mr. Vijay Kelkar, who has written the foreword, he has agreed and he has actually given a formula, being an economist. He has said, see, they get 50-50, and let them give, each of them give 1/6 of that share to the local government. That itself will make it more. See, today, the ratio of municipal revenues to GDP is less than 1%. It's hardly. So that will make it at least 1%, and every year there may be a 10% increase, which will certainly improve the revenues quite a lot. So that is one, financing part and all that. But the other question is, even with the revenues, what are you doing?
Exactly.
How are you spending?
See,
the
JSC is
way
a good
money
idea.
is
It's a
spent,
good idea. But how are you spending? In what direction? It's a leaky bucket into which you are collecting more money and putting it. So unless, and you know, Meera, more than anyone else, is a proponent of open data. You talk about your experience on, because government is inherently opaque. They don't want to share data. You are struggling from outside to get data and put it out in the public domain. If you want to collect more money and you want to bridge the trust deficit, the government has to be a lot more open up with its data.
Absolutely.
So and if you want to talk quickly about your experience, it's relevant because it's linked. Otherwise, just keeping on saying more money and more money down the drain doesn't help.
Yeah. No, the interesting thing is actually BBMP has various whatever random websites where there is some data. So we've been in the last year, along with other organizations like Janagraha, WR, we've been looking at many of these data and analyzing it, right? For example, the cess. There is just no information. The beggary says the amount that is actually collected and amount that, according to BBMP's own numbers, only 3% is used. Remaining 7% is actually unused and is kind of returning back to the state government. So this is something that we found this in one of the data jams where we organize these jams where people come together, actually start looking at data and finding, analyzing it, crunching it and sharing their findings, right? And it's really interesting to see all these findings. There's just so much you can check.
No, on construction, there's a construction cess.
Yeah.
Actually, that fund has grown to 10,000 crores on paper. And it is supposed to be used to improve the lot of these migrant workers, people at construction sites, their children. It is meant for that. Nobody knows where it is. It has gone into some general khazana, treasury, kitty. Maybe Naresh has used it for the K100 program, God knows. But you collect something for a specific purpose, and then you don't ring fence it to make sure that specific purpose it is used for. And it goes into a general kitty.
No.
No, actually, during COVID, people were trying to actually access that because
I
that's
think
when they
just
need.
one side. See, where does the money go? Full. Part of it goes somewhere else. I think the most telling example of this, when couple of years back, the Contractors Association itself complained, saying that 40% commission, whether it is 40%, 30%, whatever it is different. Or it is more, it can be less. But it is very shocking that contractors who are part of that nexus, they themselves complain. So it's all your data, what is happening to information data? So nobody knows, it is so opaque.
Dr. Ravindra, back in the early 2000 and before that, has been suggesting a local city observatory where data is kept. Naresh has been talking about a city spatial kind of a thing. None of us have made any headway. There's no shortage of ideas. In fact, I think ideas per capita out of Bangalore is more than any other city. But there is no takers.
In fact, I had set up an urban observatory.
That's exactly why we set up Open City.
So we did set up, that is as soon as this technology thing came and the digitalization and all that. But it was not taken forward, See, in my own case, what has happened mostly, although I tried to initiate a lot of reforms, I never lasted long in any post to really see its conclusion. So it has to be carried forward. See, this is the thing, Ravi's passion has to be carried forward. It has to spread to other citizens.
And also capacity. If you go into the belly of the beast, some of us have been in the belly of the beast, you won't be able to sleep at night. It's quite bare. The cupboard is bare. And I'm not even talking about corruption. I'm not talking about commitment. I'm talking about competence. I'm talking about ability to this thing. And we have this thing about, it's time to say that, for example, the Delhi model of privatization, I see Murli in the crowd. And his book also mentions it. It's time we embrace some of these kind of partnerships because they are the way forward for efficiency improvements in electricity supply, water supply. It's all possible. It's been done there. In the country, we have examples. but we don't want to adopt it.
I
Yeah, that-
mentioned about governance capacity, I have written about it. So we need professionals to manage cities now. It's no more a generalist job. I mean, generalists may come. For instance, today compared to my days, there are about a dozen IAS, senior IAS officers for city municipal corporation only, special commissioners and all that. But they also complain about the difficulty in managing the city. It's a different story.
Yeah, I understand that part. That is a capacity and the training for individual resources. You also talked about a municipal cadre. That's one aspect. But I just was remembering one instance. I was once in the ward committee for a brief period. And we were talking about why desilting and drain cleaning was not done in a particular area, a particular street. And the environmental engineer said, the joint commissioners told us this is not the scope of the health department. And the AE said, well, desilting is not in a scope, we'll only do drain cleaning. So is there a fundamental issue, the design of it's an organizational design. This is not the structural issue that, you need a governance bill, but within the organization, there's just
Today I'm sounding quite
is
pessimistic.
simple
Actually,
governance.
incidentally, I'm a very optimistic guy because 24 years I wake up in the morning and still try to, like Don Quixote, tilt at windmill. So I am optimistic. But today I told Meera consciously, I said, there is sometimes a time to do some plain speaking and not be in denial. Today I have actually chosen to don that role of not being in denial and do some plain speaking. So please don't get me wrong that this fellow is talking very negative. I'm one of the most positive guys and I still believe there'll be a better tomorrow, despite all evidence to the contrary.
Yeah, no, that's right. See, certainly what he says is right. We should be realistic, but at the same time, we should not lose hope. Then nothing will happen. That's why coming together, bringing
So I
together
lost my
people is
train.
important.
There's something I wanted to respond to when I said about the optimist thing. What was
the
your question?
design of organization.
I hate to say this, but our systems are designed to fail. And the person who made it fail, no action will be taken against that person. So you'll put out a contract, all due process would have been followed. A barber will get the contract to lay the road, but the guy who got the barber in the first place is kosher because he followed something called due process. That's what I mean by saying the system is designed to fail. We have all these, one of the biggest problems in government, if I actually have to fix government, one of the first, and I keep telling this to people in the corporate sector, people who have got money, one of the best things we can do from the outside is to flood the government with RFPs on how to put out a proposal to do a road, how to put out a tender to do a road or a water this thing, because the capacity in the system to make a proper document there, to invite, doesn't exist. The intent is to make it fail. So, in fact, the tender show model, that is what we did. We actually said that we will give you how to tender this. And we will do this to you free of cost, but you follow your process and tender this, not that. So one of the biggest things is a positive thing that we can collectively do, that if you have an idea, actually if you can go and influence it in the right direction of what should be done through what I call as the RFP process. By
The
making
basic project
you see,
management, like
not
how do you
project
track?
management.
No, no.
You see, when you tender, you call for a set of people to apply. The question is, what are you tendering for? What is the problem you're solving for, aiming
That's
to
true,
solve?
that's true.
And what is your solution set? Often we get it wrong there. See, the point really, if you look at it, it's a 3-axis. First thing is, are we planning the right thing? Second thing is the execution of that well. And are we doing it with minimum leakage? My view, my practical view is, let's get step 1 right, that we plan the right thing. Like Naresh's K100 is the right plan. Sewage may still go into the drain because there's only that much sewage he can pick up every day and remove. So sewage is still going, but the plan is the right plan. Execution is weak. The journey to a better city is to get the right plan, improve the execution. When it comes to the corruption element, Harishchandra has to be born again. It is not going to happen.
Okay, let me-
So you
think
live
there
with
is
that.
One fundamental question comes up in all this. See, for all that the citizens groups may do to improve matter, see, there is a limit to it. Ultimately, the power is with the government. They must be not only empowered, but as I said, the capacity has to be improved. But in all this, I think a question he asked was, why is it no action? Nothing happens to a person who really tendered and then is a party to the whole thing. That is mainly because in the government, whether it is the state government, local, whatever, those who are recruited, the government servants as they are called, see, there is this problem, or in a way it is well-intended provision of security. See, there's some people keep asking me, why is it nothing happens to anybody? That is because you see, you can't take action. Yes, as the saying goes, it is difficult to get into government service, but it is more difficult to get out of it. That is because, the process of taking action, etc. Now we find so many people trapped by Lokayukta, suspended, and nothing happens to them. Later they come back. So this is a very broader question, whether we should make, the government servants really should give that much of security, or they should also, we say, let us on contract basis, etc. Then there will be more accountability. Today, accountability is the main thing missing.
That's
See,
correct.
who is accountability? Especially in city governance, the buck keeps going from one to the other.
Okay, thank you. I just want Ravi, just to take off on one question and then we'll throw it open to the audience. You talked about partnering with groups, with private organizations and all. I'm going to bring this contentious issue of having think tanks and committees and all of that, right? So, and in his book also he's talked about this role of non-governing elite. So, looking back over the 24 years, what do you say worked? Where does it work, and where are we should actually keep?
See, I'm a firm believer that the way out of this mess is collaboration, and more collaboration. It's with collaboration with RWAs, with civil society groups, with private sector organizations. More and more people need to collaborate, and we need an osmosis between the government and those outside of government. Those outside of government need to understand what are the constraints and what is the challenges here. Those in government need to also learn certain kind of practices and modern project management and others. I believe, honestly, notwithstanding, I've been name called from the BATF days, saying extra constitutional authority and whatever, etc. It is par for the course when you get involved that you'll be called these names. But I still believe that is the way forward. In fact, I've seen limited experiments where people have been put as interns from private. Even right now, Nudge runs a thing where 15, 20 people are put in government. At the minimum, government PPTs improve, at the minimum. By putting some of these people there, at least the PowerPoint presentation is looking better. It's a start. The point I really believe is that we need to do a lot more of this kind of cross-pollination. Expecting government to give us the city that we believe we require, not going to happen. At least not in our lifetime. Meera, you're young, but not in our lifetime. It's not going to happen. And it's not going to happen. And therefore, my belief is that is the way forward. And if names are called because of that kind of collaboration, so be it. But that's the way forward.
Yeah, Robert, just a minute. See, in fact, I have spoken about collaborative governance. That should be the future. In fact, in another book of mine, I have expanded on it, on governing the state, where the state, the market, and the society. See, when they say market, private sector, etc., society is the civil. So we have to establish it as a system, give it some kind of a shape, and say that all the three have to collaborate. It's not merely imposing. One state imposing, nobody will relish. At the same time, citizens just shouting and not going to the government, that also doesn't work. So how do we make, this is the final question, how do these three entities collaborate, not just cooperate, but collaborate with some kind of powers, etc. I mean, that is a matter for discussion.
This Bazaar, Samaj, Sarkar.
Yeah, whatever you might call it.
Thanks. We'll open it up to questions. Actually, I hope we missed this point about political economy, which he alluded to in his first response. I hope somebody will ask that.
So many.
Yeah, Sudhir. Just note where all the hands have gone up.
You talked about the constitutional issue of center state, but there is another body called the Union Territory. Can we suggest that every city with more than, or any city that crosses a certain number, which is 2 million or 3 million, becomes a Union Territory? Number one question. Second, right now, the way the money is managed in Union Territory is slightly different from other places. I believe it goes under the president. But is there a way then to see a new city government, coordinated by the president if need be, whoever, And there are union territories with legislature. So I would suggest that above 3 million, you have a city with a legislature. And third, the fact is the top 10 cities contribute $1 trillion of GDP out of the 3.5 trillion, which means we're the largest tax contributors. So you can therefore demand, theoretically, if indeed we can actually ask for them to be included as UTs. And so now, does that make a possibility of unifying not just a BBMP but a Westcom, etc.? And question is whether the current UT with legislature is a better form of government for a city than the existing cities.
You want to say it? Because you... See, this union territory idea, I'll just tell you, the mega city, Professor K.C. Sivaramakrishnan, who actually is the author of the 74th, he actually said, I need to do Prayashchit for the 74th. And the last book he wrote is Mega City Governance, which has the kind of line of thinking that you're mentioning. That is not necessarily union territory, because union territory has its own kind of tag in terms of what it means. Because, is Bangalore part of Karnataka versus Bangalore? There are... No, you can push it off like that. But the point really is, the point really is the powers that we need to realize, what you mentioned, that cities are the engines of growth. We are 35% urbanized, statistic-wise, maybe 50% in reality. World over, urbanization is 90%. It is inevitable. The trend is your friend. So this is where it lies. Today we have a mindset that you take from Peter to pay Paul. It's a mindset across the country, whether it's at a state level, whether within a state it's at a city level, that Bangalore needs to fund North Karnataka or wherever, etc. There's a mindset. There is not a realization that if I invested more here, the productivity will increase, my tax revenue will increase, and overall gains will actually, the economic cost of thing. I haven't seen a single analysis of this kind, that putting money here and improving this place actually will give me that economic benefit. Evidence-based decision making is rarity in government. It is more gut feel and instinct as to what they are ready to do. That said, at a high level, some kind of model where you ring fence the bigger cities and have a different model of governance for the big city, I'm in agreement with that in terms of at a conceptual level. The detailing of that is really where the challenges are, because just trying to do this three-tier framework, I'm seeing the kind of challenges that we are having.
One can argue both this. There are merits and demerits in both. What you are talking about is a city government. That is, city-state, the idea of a city-state. For instance, Singapore is a city-state because it's just one city. But whereas countries like India are even smaller, see, or take Karnataka, so that Bangalore it becomes clear. See, if Bangalore becomes an independent city-state, because things manage better, etc., all the revenues will come to the city. Today, maximum revenue to the government is from the city. So they also have to use part of it to develop other areas. We say, why are you not developing other smaller cities, etc., and even other districts? So it's the toss. I mean, one can argue from the point of view efficiency, etc., yes. But if you look at the larger picture of governing a larger state, etc., it becomes very difficult.
Sudhir, you're a finance guy. Finally, you'll have to do a deal. I will give you X% which you take and use elsewhere, but allow me to run this better. It's a very pragmatic way to look at it.
It's a big subject. I think somebody else. Let's go to I think we'll go to other questions.
Next question.
We'll come back. Yeah, I think please.
Meera K, I'm wearing the average Indian hat. That's how we started your talk. The right to footpath has evaporated. Every footpath looks like a Himalayan slope. Every day we see that and nobody does anything, it's normalized. I was a ward committee member. Pathetic experience I had. Corporator regretted perhaps taking me to the ward committee. I don't know how committee members are taken. Should they be elected or nominated? Means he sends some names and somebody, I don't know who approves it and they come. Most of them are his people who cozy up to him, are his chelas or whatever it is. Nothing works. Even the question answer sessions, they're supposed to give the questions 1 week before. His chelas will come and start asking questions. So no important thing can be discussed. He says, they are poor people, I have to answer them first. So that's how this poor people, rich people concept comes into the ward committee and it gets fizzled out. Should they be elected? That was my
So
first
the question
This
is,
question.
I request you to read the Greater Bangalore Governance Bill of the committee. Just read the ward committee section. Let me know later whether on paper it sounds right. I mean, how it works out, because it addresses some of the questions that you're raising. Right now, the thinking in the leadership is, Jo Jeeta, Wohi Sikandar. So you're one the corporator, hand over the fishing rights of that particular place to that guy. Don't trouble them with ward committee and all this stuff, is really the current thinking. And the current bill also reflects that. Jo Jeeta, Wohi Sikandar.
Yeah, next.
Yeah, just take that question and that question and then combine it. Yeah.
After that.
But you need to go to that side of the room.
Yeah. Quickly, I think we can keep the questions brief so that more.
Okay. So I know you spoke a lot about constitutional stuff, money, structure, and all that. I think you alluded to the core problem, which we completely ignore, is just the people, right? Irrespective of what our identity is, as people living in the city, the basic thing is there's no footpath, the answer is you buy a two-wheeler. If there's a pothole and you're dying with the two-wheeler, buy a car. If you're stuck at Silkboard Junction, get a driver. So in buying a place, right? I want an apartment that has a little bit of green around it, and that's it, and a pool.
So what is
The question is, unless you have people who really want it, there is no constituency for it. The basic mentality of everybody here is, I want to create a small bubble where I can isolate myself from everything else.
which is the gated community is the ultimate example of that.
Ultimate example of including across, and you can't hide behind.
But finally, unfortunately, they all have to hit Main Street.
Exactly, but they don't seem to care, right? See, that's the thing. Like, you isolate yourself, and that's my only interaction with the system. See, that is what is depressing. It's nothing to do with corruption, structure,
all
whatever.
This is related to the question of governance. Why is it not happening? So that is the thing we have been discussing all along. I think.
But we expect it. Our basic idea is somebody should do it. If somebody fixes it, I'm happy. But I'm not
Also,
going to do
one
anything
thing to
about it.
remember
We have
is,
actually answered all
yeah,
this. I think
people, you're talking about people with privilege, which is still a minority. All said and done, the masses, there's a large population out there which can't afford in actually getting to the next level. Maybe we can combine questions, that one and this one, yeah.
This one, the lady there, and then
Yeah.
this youngster here.
Yeah.
We need some younger voices, the future and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So, in the interest of plain speak, simple question, why are we even having this conversation around corruption anymore? Because frankly speaking, in a lot of parts of the world, we are okay paying express fees. You know, I want my visa in so many days, you pay an express fee. Corruption, can we not formalize corruption into the system, including ensuring that, by the way, you, sir, Mr. BBMP Commissioner, a certain percentage of your payment is a function of what you've executed well, you'll get a portion of the contract on that also. But let's at least get outcomes by saying we are willing to pay for the damn outcome. Take your damn money.
In fact, there is a country, I'm not sure about the data fully, so I will not name the country. The country actually allows the officers to take bribes. They just want them to pay taxes on the bribes. So if you get faster service by paying bribe, it is an acceptable practice, not as incentivizing for performance, but provided they come in the tax net. Anyway,
Yeah.
sorry.
There
lady
are
there.
actually
It
like
is,
both economic and social arguments against it, but yeah, it's an interesting concept. Tatkal.
Legalizing corruption, like
Yeah.
legalizing
that-
illegal buildings.
We do live in this age right now, in the younger age, where decentralization is no more a function of willingness, but it is a coded action with, there's a lot of technology that in itself is inherently decentralized. A prime example of that is the blockchain world. And there is, the blockchain world of governance can ensure that decisions are taken by algorithms or contracts which are coded and also can be, morphed by other people, and it's very participatory way of governance. So do you think there is a future for actually taking the whole saga of technology and smart cities and actually using it with blockchain to actually create decentralized cities?
I recommend you read an article in the New Yorker on Estonia. Estonia is the world's first digital country. I mean, I don't even know how we'll ever get to that. It's built on blockchain and all that. They're built on a basic principle that even if Russia invades Estonia and takes over everything, 10 generations from now, they will still be able to prove ownership of that property, that this is my property because of blockchain. So I know that tech helps it, but today actually, tech in government, I hate to say this, is not seen as much as an enabler, as much as a worry that it is throwing more light on what is happening. So the mindset needs to change. So blockchain, if you're curious, study the example of Estonia. It's the world's first blockchain country.
In fact, there was some conversation about blockchain and India, I mean, government and all that.
See,
few years.
This person and then Naresh. Sorry,
It's all about
See,
AI
at least
now.
I must say, in Bangalore, they started what is called UPOR, urban property ownership, right? They are surveying and trying to fix who is the correct owner, etc. And that's still a long way to go.
You know, for the last 20 years, they said we have GIS-based property system.
so-
They have now realized that the GIS doesn't have the lat-long coordinates, which is why there's a whole new exercise that has been started to get the lat-long coordinates of your house. Sorry.
Yeah, next.
This is Dr. Pratap. I run Pothole Raja. You talked a lot about potholes. One of the trends that I've now been last 10 years working on fixing potholes is to see if we can move towards a PPP model and connecting CSR. Leveraging, there's a large corpus from the corporates and a privatization. In fact, the entire day today was about how can we leverage CSR for infrastructure.
So, Pratap, I'll come in here.
Yeah.
You know, BIC has a policy of no promotion.
Yes.
So, but the key thing here really is you're in good business because of the continuous creation of potholes and CSR and other money. You will figure out how to get it. I think the problem we need to tackle is how do we build roads that don't form potholes in the first place.
Exactly.
See, Tendershaw, for example, all said and done, the St. Mark's Road, Residency Road, 7-8 years have elapsed since those roads have happened. And frankly speaking, we have not had this pothole kind of a problem. So what we need to really fix is not allow that to happen and not the best fix after the problem happens, just as a matter of this thing. Somebody here, who's got the mic? Yeah, this young gentleman.
Sir, you think the idea of Bangalore as a separate union territory is viable? Adding to the previous question earlier,
Answered that, yeah. Okay, what is your question?
You're asking whether it's viable.
where it's a viable solution to the
Short
problem.
answer, I don't think it's
No,
going to
it's
again
as
happen.
of now, in a country like India, it's not viable.
It's not viable.
Otherwise, you see, imagine if Bombay or Mumbai,
Everybody
Bengaluru,
breaks away. Bombay
Chennai,
breaks away. Bangalore
they're
breaks
all
away.
taken
Chennai breaks away. It's
what will
over.
happen to the rest of the country? How will it develop? It's very difficult.
Give it to Mr. Rakesh. Naresh, just, he's from the J&K cadre. Just, I mean, he has a whole...
The government will impose a LG on the city.
You see, the basic problem in major city governance, a place like Delhi, Bombay, Bangalore, primarily what we call as municipal functions, they are very limited in number. Actually, a city requires much greater requirement of transportation, electricity, education, health, municipal services, of course. All these are integrated services. But even in a place like Delhi, which is a union territory, these functions are segregated. There's a Delhi Development Authority, there's a electricity supply, this thing. So then there's no coordination. Transport also no coordination. So the problem is not UT administration. Problem is to have a structure which is truly a city government, which has the responsibility and the accountability to these things. For example,
But there's no appetite for it, sir. We have
but
a
unfortunately,
thing,
let me see. You see, I've been in Bangalore for the last 4 years only, but I've observed there's no pride in being a Bangalorean in the sense we are an IT capital of the world. We all say that. But look at the IT capital. Are we in any way comparison to, say, San Francisco? No. Maybe the population here is very good. Maybe better IT personnel here than San Francisco or something, but or LA or whatever. But the fact is the cities out there.
Yeah,
There's no comparison.
Our story is success despite government, sir, not because.
So what happens is, no, but I'm really concerned why the state government, after all, we are living in the state government, doesn't the state government and its leadership have any pride in Bangalore city as a Bangalore city?
See,
They don't want to give an example of Bangalore city because they have to attract investment from outside everywhere. Are they thinking that we'll get investment in spite
Sir,
of the
we are
government?
still fishing in that toxic pond, sir. I hate to
See,
say this, that's what's happening.
That is what I was
explained this
thinking,
Earlier, why the state government is not doing it.
Yes.
The state government doesn't want to share its power with the city government. And again, as you said, see, when even 74th Amendment speaks about municipality. See, the city is not just municipality, it is all these organizations together. So unified governance system we need, yeah, agree. Yeah.
I'm not really asking a question, it's the wrong person.
More wisdom than the people on the table.
You got 1 second. No, the only point I want to make here is everybody is going round and round the mulberry bush, bemoaning some bleak scenario. See, the issue is, I think, what Dr. Ravindra also mentioned at the beginning, I think a group of people need to come together again, not as appointed by government, like some task force. All these task force, whatever, no task force, all these things are been there, done that. Now, the whole concept of having usually in other cities, you have these guys called city fathers. And today, in today's politically correct world, it has to be city, whatever, people. Or rather, maybe like something like a self-appointed custodian role. There's no point saying, I don't know what to do. How will I get involved in the city? Some kind of voluntary organization needs to be started in the city, like a self-appointed custodian.
Naresh,
You say, I own the city.
7:45, you're the chairman of that group.
Hold on.
Go for it.
Hold on. So the second point I'm saying that, the only reason I do what I do is I am self-appointed custodian. That's all. It's nothing stopping you from doing that. Right? Whether I'm,
It's a good
out of 30 things I've proposed to the city, 2 have come through. Maybe 3. Okay, maybe one is Church Street, one is this K100. But look at K100 itself, right? For those of you who don't know, the stormwater drain which goes from City Market, even beyond, from the bus stand, all the way to Bengaluru Lake, if you have noticed very closely, Bengaluru Lake hasn't caught fire in the last 2 years. We used to make the New York Times at least once a year, now we don't even do that. Right? The front page, it used to come as front, lake catches fire kind of thing. But what has happened is that based on that 10-kilometer project, I presented it to the World Bank. The World Bank sanctioned 4,500 crore to fix the city, saying that this is the right thing to do. And they promptly left me out of the committee.
That's how it works.
And promptly made sure, they've called a tender now for 300 kilometers last week, and I have not been invited.
That's how it works,
This is the thing. You have to be ready as a custodian for high frustration level. It'll be your idea. You've made the bloody song and dance at your cost, but you still have to give it away. So, and I've been now yelling at the government saying that every time there's a blasted problem, do not respond with a project. Please respond with a policy, like a simple example, right? The topic of all party conversation in Bangalore today, what is it? Traffic. Nobody comes to, I always tell people, if you're going to come and meet me, think you're catching a train. The train will leave. Everybody comes late and says traffic. BIC, I've noticed, starts at 6:30 on the dot, whether people are there.
Picking up this one, it's a very,
So one last point,
very,
sir. One last point.
Oh, okay, you can.
One last thing I will say, and then I'll give the mic away. So the government now should, for instance, the one policy line which will change mobility in Bangalore is move people, not private vehicles. All government mobility policies aimed against moving private vehicles and cars faster and faster. What is really needed is to move people, fundamental. Then there is a process to make that happen, and the project comes last in the hierarchy. In this government,
We know that nobody.
no, I'm just telling the others. I'm not
Basically,
addressing
he's
you.
suggesting we should have
I'm
guiding
not addressing
principles.
you. You know it.
Naresh, just one point I,
You finished
in
already. You
response
asked
to
one
this.
question.
Yeah,
No,
Ravi.
no, in response to Naresh, just one thing. Now, for instance, taking up your point, move people and not the vehicles. Now, the proposed tunnel road in Bangalore, which will only promote private vehicles. So now you must oppose it. I had written an article in DH, opposing the whole thing. But can you take up that issue with the government and stop the tunnel road and say more public transport? I think that itself can be an issue. We can take it up.
Naresh, we got 8,000 people for the steel flyover, right? That all of you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we can
Just send us
discuss
the
But
it later.
no, here's
Last
the
question. We're running out of
Ravi,
time.
yeah. No, just to kind of,
He's already asked somebody from there. Please. You've spoken just now.
Still another time. Somebody else, yeah.
Sorry.
okay,
Yeah.
Okay.
I wanted to ask
Yeah,
whether
go
there
ahead.
is really a constitutional post called Guardian Minister, because we tend to have the Guardian Minister, we didn't have a BBMP election for the last 4 years. We don't have a mayor.
You have a Bangalore Development Minister.
Yeah, Bangalore Development Minister,
Who's the
as we
Guardian?
call it.
Public sector is not a shadow cabinet.
So we have 29 MLAs and 4 MPs. None of them are being consulted on whatever is being done. And then what is the point of having these people elected from from these
Why are
constituencies?
we talking about shadow cabinet? The regular cabinet itself is in, it doesn't seem to function.
And so my point being that, if one person has to make all the decision, then there is no need for all these, election.
Just give it this. Last question, yeah, please.
Hi, so thank you for the session, and I just had a question for those of us who are regular citizens, unaware of what is going on.
The mic, not able to.
Oh, sorry. Is it better now? So those of us who are regular citizens, unaware, blissfully unaware of what's going on, and going to malls to watch a movie, etc. So how do you plan to increase awareness among citizens who go by the principle of
Good
Swarpa
point.
adjust Madi?
I know.
I don't know, it's the weather,
I know.
maybe.
So I have this idea, it needs to be implemented sometime. Basically, think about it, Instagram, sub 1 minute, where you put out you have to do new age kind of thing to get your message across. And essentially the theme has to be think about it. And you don't sermonize, you don't do anything. In a reasonably witty manner, if you can put that issue and end each video literally with a thought, respect the wisdom of the individual to think through that. We really need more aware citizens slowly building up that you start. So when you see a news item, one bell goes off saying that I'm not excited about this 500 crores, or like he mentioned about the road. So that is really the way forward. And for that, a set of people need to come forward to get sub 1 minute's bites out, which is not sermonizing, not preaching, just leave it out there and raise the collective bar on how a city works or does not work. I think there was one last question there. Sir, a senior citizen.
Sir.
That's not right.
Please, sir.
I think the thing comes to the citizen, what he'll do. I've had a good experience. We had problems in our area. I went to the corporator. He solved all the problems within 1 week. Similarly, I had another problem about my building, an illegal flat. Thanks to Dr. Ravindra, it got broken.
25 years ago.
So the question is, people must take interest in their area. Everybody said, why are you worried? I said, somebody has to do it. It was not only affecting me, it was affecting everybody in the street. So we need more civic sense.
Agreed, sir.
Yeah. On that, let me just come to, I just wanted to make one mention of Naresh's point about we should all get together and like 200 people to go oppose Tunnel Road or whatever. I think it's important to acknowledge, while yes, more people should get involved, also the existing crowd, there is burnout because you've been like dealing with the same problem or new problems keep cropping up. Every time to go assemble 8,000 people like you did for Steel Fire is not really practical. They just like dime a dozen, like every week you will find 3 new nonsensical ideas coming up, right? And to fight it and to constantly be aware is also exhausting. I think we need to find a way out of it. That's one. Number two, I think my first question still remains because I think it's a hard question also saying, what is it that, is in the minds of politicians, officials? We need to understand that system better, the thinking better. I'm serious.
We know that.
No, even that power.
Everyone
There is this book called Power Broker by this New York Park Commissioner called Robert Moses, and the author took 7 years to really understand how that whole power system works. I think the public needs to have a better sense. People like you obviously know because you've been engaging with them.
I have dealt with that question.
But Robert Moses had such terrible ideas for New York that it required that Canadian lady, that activist, Jane Jacobs, to bring him to heel. one citizen, Jane Jacobs, brought the mighty Robert Moses.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't recommend the Robert Moses.
No,
book.
I'm not recommending him. I'm saying the book took 7 years to write because that is the complexity that was uncovered.
See, that also shows, see, let us admit that managing or governing a city is a complex issue. See, all over India, the type of the environment we have, the political system, it's not that easy. If tomorrow, if you are made the mayor or the commissioner, it's not easy to solve the problems given all the powers. So we need to understand the system, and I'll close with this since we have been speaking about collaboration, people's thing. You know, when I was in the corporation as administrator, I started a movement called Swabhimana, which essentially is this collaborative. I brought the government agencies, BBMP, BDA together, and the private sector, some people, and part of the civil society, the NGOs, etc. It worked very well. It was, in fact, we started the first garbage collection home to home from here in Bangalore. Like that, and I can give you a number of examples. Now, all that happened. Do you know later how it, and it continued for quite some time, till the councillors themselves found that it was taking their own power. They saw to it that it is skill. So we need to revive something like that.
Anjali has to be given the mic.
Okay, Anjali, given somebody who's been involved in master plan last.
India, I mean, Bangalore's #1 master planner. So if you have any problems, catch her after this session.
Yeah.
And thank you for then saying, giving a statement before this that the master plan is complete nonsense. So that puts me in a good condition anyway. Anyways, but Dr. Ravindra, I really wanted to thank you for bringing up Swabhimana, because I think it was one of the most amazing initiatives that the city governments had bought into, that civil society had bought into, that in my opinion, even the councillors had bought into it. There were other reasons why the whole program fell apart. I think one needs to go back to some of these processes and activities that happened once upon a time, because I really feel that that energy in itself is missing, and missing from all the stakeholders, whether it's the city governments, it's the citizens, it's the think tanks. Somewhere we are missing out on what will help us to thread these things.
You and your group are doing that. I think we must mention that.
Well, also, okay, that's another story. But anyways, yes, we are attempting to do that, but it's a different. It needs a much longer conversation. But I think we also need to go back and, you know, also thank you very much for at least ending by saying that running a city is a very complex issue, and therefore to unravel this complexity and then start with framing the complexity, understanding what the complexity is all about, and then jumping to solutions, I think is something I'm just trying to push the, just push back a little bit and say, because I think many a times we are too much in our echo chambers and we don't come out of that, if I may say so.
Thank you, Anjali. I just want to add,
Totally, but somebody has to do that research and keep doing the research, and things won't change.
Let us hope something will come out after this meeting.
I think change is also, okay.
Something should come out of.
Ravi, just if I can just take the moderator's privilege and just conclude. Thank you everybody for being here. It's been a far-ranging conversation. We've kind of covered many subtopics in this vast complex issue, and yet there is a certain worry that I have, because all said and done, we are talking about in a era of climate change, and just how was this April, for example, we crossed 39 degrees or something, and in certain areas, thanks to the tin roof and all, people were living in 35, 40. Right? It's really not a fair thing to, allow business as usual. We can keep debating this and allow for things to get to improve, all of that. And other countries, other cities have gone through similar pain points, even in the West. But yet we are not in a situation to have that, a slow pace of change. So that is something we need to keep in mind. Another thing is, it is an aging population. And another aspect, like in yesterday's, there was this article by Srinath Reddy, right? The rights of future generations. What are we going to leave them? And from that perspective, this is not a problem that we can take our time to, figure out. There has to be a much more concerted effort, and we are in crisis mode. So we have to acknowledge that and work towards it. So yeah, I mean, we really have to think through what are we leaving the next generation. So with that, thank you everybody.
Thank you, thank you.